Don't you sort them by?
Good evening, everybody. This is the Warrant and Finance Committee of the 9th of November 2017. Call it to order. And initially, I believe on our agenda it will be the minutes of the previous two meetings. So I turn it over to Ms. Michaud.
I combined it to the last two meetings. One, because October 2nd, I wasn't available, so I added that minutes onto it, because we actually had a vote at that time. Because that was on Kenny Paul's stuff. So I made sure we got it in our minutes. And then the last minutes we had were basically on Tom Gore's new terms for the town to use, and that we had voted to send it forward to the Board of Selectmen.
Okay.
And then when we listened to it, we talked about it and sent it forward.
Are there any deletions or additions or corrections that anybody wants to make on these two
And I
minutes?
apologize that I didn't get it on for you guys to see prior to.
The spelling of my last name.
Sorry, Nancy.
Thank you, Ms. Rubin.
Lois and I both have a big problem with spelling.
Yeah.
We've agreed that.
It's spelled as it's
I don't-
written.
Exactly. I spell cat, K-A-T.
Okay. May I hear a motion to accept the
it's
Move
minutes?
we
correct down
accept
at
the
the bottom
minutes
here.
as written with the correction of Nancy's
Roma.
last name.
I'll second that.
It's been
Well, it's right
moved
in
and
one
seconded.
place.
Any further discussion on the previous two meetings' minutes? If not, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, fine.
Who seconded that?
I did.
Okay, thanks, sir.
You're welcome.
The next item is liaison reports. Anybody have any liaison reports?
Well, I will go first. I am the liaison for the school committee, and as many of you know, I was pretty sick for most of September and October. So unfortunately, I do not have anything to report today, but my apologies. And now
Nope,
that
that's perfectly
now that
fine.
I'm back and healthy again, I will have something next time.
That's fine. Anybody else? have
Mine, I actually went to the rec committee, but I found that I had too many family members on it to be on that rec committee. I need to be alternated out. And then Tom can't be on it either, because Tom's got family on it, so.
I do?
Yes, you do. Your daughter-in-law's on it.
Oh, really? Which daughter-in-law?
So we have to kind of.
Lisa.
Find somebody else if you don't mind. I mean, I had a good time. I got to see family that I hadn't seen in a while, but it
Well,
wasn't.
Lois, you can't be on any committee because you're related to just about everybody in town anyway who's been here more than 10 years.
It's just like when we do warrant and finance, we actually go out there for finances. I'm like, oh, I can't do that one. I can't do this one. Can't do this one. And I'm trying to be, I'm trying to be nice and be honest with everybody. I can't, that way I'm not going to be accused of partisanship.
Okay.
So.
Otherwise, you had nothing else to report.
Other than that, it was fun. It was a good time. They got a new person coming in that's going to take Lau's place. Chris is looking forward to doing it. Matter of fact, he should be in the position at this point because Lau was getting done after soccer and Chris was taking over basketball. And then I haven't had a chance to go to planning board because unfortunately they had this meetings the same night, so I kind of didn't make it. I had gone to forestry and conservation.
Yeah, I know, and I was out of town for both of those last month.
I did go to forestry and conservation, and they're doing well. They're actually working over on the H Road, their project over that way. They're still part of that. What is it, Goat Hill?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they're still working on that. They talked about that a little bit the other night. And they're actually now talking about maybe doing forestry on the forestry that we have in town, one on the Hebo and one on the town farm road. But I haven't heard the results on that at this point, whether they can continue or not. I think funding is one of the issues that the forester might not be able to go on, but I haven't heard the results on that. And that's why on the minutes I put that they're trying to look in, the town is trying to, the forestry and conservation is trying to look into the Hebo also, where they have land out there, to make it into some type of conservation. That's all I've heard. I haven't heard any more at that point.
Okay.
And they're supposed to be making, I guess what they call a plan of action or plan to move on and move forward. So that's beyond that. You want a cemetery report too?
If you wish.
Go ahead,
Go ahead,
Motor Mouth.
Roland.
We visited, we've been working on, which end of the town?
North end.
North end. I can't, I never remember which is north, which is south.
Oh, come on.
We've been working up towards the Acton Ridge area. We've gone to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 cemeteries that we've located so far. And there's one that is still not been located yet. We know where it should be, but we haven't found it yet. Basically, we're going out, and what we're doing is we're going out and visiting these locations, identifying where the location is by GPS, as well as a
Years ago.
nomenclature, you know, or a verbal, you know, description of where a particular cemetery is. We're measuring the cemetery as far as the, you know, size. We're looking at the condition both inside the cemetery and outside, you know, closely around the cemetery. One of the cemeteries that we went and looked at, which does have 2 veterans in it, is out in the woods, and oh my God, the trees are everywhere. And that one's pretty close to the end of the H Road, right across from
Rogers.
the Camary residence. We had a visit from a gentleman packing a pistol, as a matter of fact, while we were out there. He was a bit concerned as to who was out
That one was found.
on his, or adjacent to his property.
Well, I
But
guess he's had a lot of issues.
basically, that's what we're trying to do, is to go visit all of the damn cemeteries, pardon my French, so that we can identify where they are, the locations. We're actually identifying who's buried in the cemeteries so that we can verify that with the information that's already on hand, some of the information that's already on hand. Also so that we can identify, you know, possible veterans that have been overlooked, because,
We overlooked a couple.
and we have, Mr. Purvis, who,
Mr. Purvis and Mr. Moore, we actually missed, and I didn't realize that.
Are they buried up there?
Excuse me?
Are they buried up there?
Yes, they are.
Oh, no kidding.
Mr. Purvis is buried behind his house.
Oh, I didn't know
Back
that.
in the field,
And Mr. Moore's buried at his house.
Oh, no kidding. Huh. All right.
but,
Mr. Waterhouse, is there just the one cemetery that so far you all have not been able to locate?
no, there are, this is just on my end of town.
Okay.
Okay?
So approximately how many are still out there?
Currently, the count that Steve has is the town has 83 locations in the town where we have people buried. Some of the cemeteries may have, how many people are in Maple Grove?
Almost, probably 3,000.
Okay? And then some may only have 1 or 2 people. But being as, you know, this is a cemetery committee, if you have 1 person buried, it's a grave site.
Sure.
You know, we need to identify where it is so that, you know, number one, so that nobody does something like building too close to them. Because
We've
technically,
already-
you know, you can't do things like that,
We've already lost 2 to that.
state law, whatnot. But
What is the distance? off?
25.
feet.
25 feet?
25 feet.
Yeah, matter of fact, me and DOT went a couple of rounds on Milton Mills Road.
But it's a long process, especially when you start going, we went down on,
You can tell me which cemetery, and I'll tell you where you're at.
down off Man Road. We went down and looked at Bobby Mann's cemetery,
This Horns.
Horns, yes. It's,
Then we went to Rogers.
then we went to Rogers, which is down on
It's off the lake.
Chipmunk, or,
No,
not-
Birch.
it's off some road, I can't remember the
Birch
name of it.
Drive.
But no, it's not.
Not Birch Drive. Birch.
So what you're saying is location is real challenge?
Oh, yeah.
Some of the locations are extremely challenging, extremely challenging. When you start having to trek a couple of hundred yards through the woods just to get to the spot where, years ago, it probably wasn't woods. It was probably an open area.
Sure.
However, now,
It's really-
what used to be a field is now a forest. So that's basically what we've been doing is trying to go and hit, cemeteries, okay, get their locations, map them GPS-wise so that eventually we'll be able to give the town an entire mapping of where all the cemeteries are located, who's there, how many veterans do we actually have in these cemeteries that we are mandated by state law to make sure that we take care of. And I'm sure that the town would agree that we want to take care of as many of the cemeteries as we possibly can, whether they're veteran or not. Some of the cemeteries are private, such as Doyle's.
But Doyle's has several veterans in it.
That's true. So that's it for cemetery.
Very good. Anybody else?
Yep. I went to the marijuana committee. But I guess,
Never mind, go ahead. Excuse me.
so anyway, they actually are doing a lot of great stuff. They are calling Washington State and Colorado quite a bit and doing bridge calls, talking to different people, whether it be a municipality. So far, I think they've talked to a lot of retail stores. One thing that they've noticed is that the sky didn't fall, so it's not as scary as people think. For the most part, crime did not increase, anything like that. But there is a lot to it, and they are realizing how much there is to this, that you have to make sure you have everything all in place before the moratorium gets lifted from the state. They are going to have a speaker tomorrow night. I think he's a medical grower. So that should be interesting. And that's about it.
Very good.
Can I ask,
Any questions?
may I?
Yes, of
I was just wondering, this last meeting occur after the governor's veto or before the governor's veto, and was there any impact as a result of that?
It was after the veto.
Okay.
They spoke about it briefly, but they're still on track
Okay, all right.
to gathering information.
Yeah.
And I think soon they'll probably be looking at, what other towns in Washington and Colorado, what they did with zoning. Most people they talk to recommend that they should really look at the zoning of their town.
And to add to that, we got a vote coming up on the 28th.
The 28th, we have the vote for the moratorium, and it's a regular election from what I understand, so the polls, please correct me if I'm wrong, from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., is that correct?
That's correct.
Normally.
Yep. So be there and be square.
Okay. Anybody else? I had a chance to talk with Ms. Shane from the school board regarding when they're going to start their process of looking at their budget for the fiscal year 2018-2019. And it's apparently right now it's going to probably be scheduled not until after the holidays. So if there's going to be anything beforehand, they'll let us know. And they also reiterated the fact that they liked the way that we did it last year, the two committees sitting together at a table and going over things, and they would hope that they'd be able to do that again this year. And I told them I thought it was a great idea, and everybody was happy with it last year.
Well, it gives us the opportunity to ask questions
Right.
during the budget process.
Exactly.
So that, there's clarity in our minds when the articles are presented for us.
Right.
Okay. That's it on that subject. The next thing is freedom of information affidavits. I know of two people whom I gave
Myself
an
included.
affidavit to, including Mr. Gore. Yes. And they asked that we get these finished. Everyone else, I believe, has done their...
That's because I don't know when the date was that I did it, for one. It was so long ago, but that's neither here nor there.
Okay. It is important, I think, because we do handle finances,
I know, I'll look at it on TV
it's
again.
important that we follow state law on it. So if those two people could go ahead, including Mr. Gore, and get it done and turn it into the town administrator, that would be fine. Everybody else is perfect on that. The next item is actually Mr. Gore, about comments with regards to the terminology and algorithm that we directed to the Board of Select Persons. Tom, do you want to take the?
I have not, I have been waiting for some kind of formal reaction from the board. We haven't seen that yet, and that's fine. I put an email out last week which said what I had hoped would happen. It hasn't happened yet, and I would hope that the board would look seriously at the issues and give us an opportunity to sit down and discuss it with them, but it's totally up to them. So.
Okay. Any other comments on this subject? Fine.
I will make one.
All right.
Basically, Tom, the subject is dead,
Well, I would.
okay? The response from the Board of Selectmen at 2 previous meetings that the board had was basically, they see no need to make the changes that were suggested. Let's bury the horse.
Any comments, Mr. Gore?
Well, I'm not sure what that means. And I
What does
think
burying
that's
the
it.
horse mean?
Well, you know, we can keep beating the subject around for the next 10 years, but if there aren't going to be any changes, if the changes that were suggested to the selectmen are not going to be adopted by the selectmen and the town, then, you know, you're beating your gums in the wind.
Well, that's fine. And the board can, and the board can individually, as a group, make that decision when the time comes that we would consider any further action of it. I don't anticipate any further action unless or until we hear back from the board, till some point in the future.
So I assume that we'll be getting something from the board officially.
I would hope so.
I'm not going to hold my breath.
Well, they have to say yes or no, or
I think they did, plainly.
I will.
They said no at the meeting.
What did you say no to, if I can
Yeah,
inquire?
could you do us a favor? I would be happy to. Sorry, it's just so everybody can hear.
No, we did. We looked over what you had sent to us. We, all three of us, looked it over. We sent it off to the, not the assessor, to the
Auditor?
auditor. They looked it all over. They really don't see a need of changing anything. Everything that we're doing is being done above board, the way it should be done. The wording that we use in our warrants is perfectly acceptable. And the warrant, the school board was actually here, well, a couple of members were here, and their treasurer, not treasurer, but their finance director was here. And they've sent it off to their people as well, and it came back that everything that's being done is being done correctly, and the wording is just, it's an opinion. So, no, we've decided that, you know, the people that we rely on heavily, you know, the people that look after what we do, don't seem to have an issue with it, so.
The only thing I would like to ask the members of the Board of Selectmen who are here is the fact that, for example, the school board uses a particular attorney that does a lot of work here in the county. Is that correct? Am I correct on that? And most of the county has consolidated SATs, also SAU, or some type of consolidated school districts, which does make it very easy for towns not to get involved with the school. We are an exception to the rule. We spend extra money so that we can have our own local control, which I'm in favor of. But the question comes up then, because they are a simple department of the school, the town does have a right to insert any sort of wording as long as it's not illegal. And the question came up whether or not in having a 3-year contract automatically placed in the budget, that we are actually committing future funds for the following fiscal year and for the fiscal year after that on the voters that are not, that's not being fair. It's not being legal, in fact. And the other question that I had was, if you have a special meeting for education in a particular fiscal year, then it's only applicable for that year. So if they have a special educational meeting for the budget in May, let's say, it's really only valid till June 30th, if I'm not mistaken. Mr. Gore?
It would be valid to the end of that fiscal year.
Yeah.
That's correct, unless you specifically said in the warrant that would it be applicable to a following fiscal year.
Or and the years thereafter, right?
No, you couldn't do it for the years.
You can't do it for the years.
Well, you probably could construct an article.
Should we stay on subject?
But in order to do that for years thereafter, you would want to construct it in the form of an ordinance.
So that was the only questions that I had about it. As far as the terminology, I think that the fact that we had very few statutory restricted funds, despite the fact that we've used that word so loosely in a whole bunch of instances, would indicate that perhaps we ought to at least use universal terminology and use the same terminology if we are going to have statutory funds. But if the Board of Selectmen are happy with that, that's fine. But I go back to the fact that the legal people who take care of our school board, probably most of their business is with large consolidated schools, and that's a whole different ballgame. And if they are a department of our town, which they are, then the Board of Selectmen does have a right to interject, place other wordage in anything as far as articles are concerned, in order to clarify the stance of the town.
The only thing you're being told that in all this is that what you are dealing with is legal. And I've never questioned that, with the exception of the statutory reserve funds. This whole issue doesn't arise because it's legal or not legal, because basically the only thing that makes something illegal is it violates state law. You can construct an infinite variety of wordings, okay, that are legal, not just one, an infinite variety that satisfy that criteria of not violating state law. This is constructed around the clarity for the town meeting so that everybody can understand what's going on. That has been my objection from the beginning and continues to be my objection, aside from a few legal issues regarding the use of statutory funds. And I do think there are issues, and I think there will continue to be issues, but for right now, I'm satisfied, and we will move forward. Okay, that's my position.
We'll still look at it.
I think we need...
I mean, we can't, we've made our decision on it, but,
You can always revisit a decision, but some discussion
exactly.
needs
And
to
we
take
do
place.
appreciate the work that was put into it. I mean, there was a tremendous amount of work put into putting that together.
Yep.
That did not happen overnight, we know that. So, but we tend to go by what,
Understand?
the people that handle it.
I would suggest a couple things. First of all, if you're going to rely upon the auditors, then read the introduction to the audit and what the auditors are doing. They have no business doing legal interpretations, and they will tell you that right off the bat.
Ms. Cognata
That's
has the
number one.
floor. Please, go ahead.
So
I'm sorry.
that's okay. So, that's all right. So basically, just my opinion, my statement, regarding the decision. I get that you've spoken to them and everything is fine and legal, but we're just suggesting using a uniform language. And so for me, it's just hard to understand what we're doing is okay and everyone just wants everything to be easier to understand, but let's not do that. So that's just the way that I'm taking it, as it's just, I don't understand it. I just think it was, we put a lot of time into it.
Oh, yeah.
It's basically just clarifying language so that it's consistent from one warrant to another, from one year to another, so that when people do go out and they're reading something, it makes sense, and then we don't spend hours on the floor at town meeting arguing over what does this mean, what does that mean, what does it not mean, and I just hope that at some point you do revisit that, because it's just, for me, it's just kind of common sense to just be able to use some sort of consistency.
The other issue that
my
comes to
opinion.
mind that definitely needs clarification is all the carried articles and the reserve accounts listed in there, because every year they appear on the warrant with different names. this board, as a board, has no way of being able to track from year to year to year what we're talking about here, nor do a number of these people on this board know what these are. None of us have an exact knowledge of what they are, okay? And one of the things we asked for specifically was, let's set a name on these accounts. We used to do it by number. That's even gone from the warrant now, so that there's no way to track it anyway. I don't know how you folks do your job, frankly, but that's your business. If you're satisfied signing treasurer's warrants based on the wording you have, again, that's your business. I don't know how you do it, though, with the wording that we have in there. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you, Ed.
Next item is the valuation data. As everyone knows, I brought this up at one of the Board of Selectmen meetings 2 weeks ago. Based on data that I discovered, and asked that the Board of Selectmen look at the data and give us at least a 10-year rundown on valuation. The valuation had fallen from 3.6 million, I think as the high, down to about 67,000. And I tried to keep
Not
it,
valuation.
valuation
Yeah.
for
Property,
personal property.
personal property.
Oh,
This is for retail,
okay, thank
retail
you.
personal
Thank
property
you.
tax, I'm sorry.
Okay.
And so, based on that, it was certainly open, I thought, to some questioning as to how this had happened. And that having been said, I think we got off to a difficult start because first we received an item that said it was too complex if we had to go from house to house and count television sets. And I quickly wrote back and said, we're not talking about property, personal property, we're talking about retail entities, personal property taxes. And so that was clarified. Then this past week, I asked if we could have to see exactly what the tax collector does. And so I came in on election day, in fact, dropped by the window and asked if I could possibly have a copy of the job description for the tax collector. And Ms. Rue said, yes, I'll send it to you this afternoon. I then went back to the House, wrote the committee, and I said, we're going to get the copy of how we have a job description for this office. And here is one that is a model that contains all sorts of items. You can use that to compare it with. Well, then somehow or other, somebody got into the idea that we wanted to make a job description. Believe you me, we have enough to do without getting involved with making job descriptions for people in the administration who are under the board of select persons. And how that got started, I do not have any idea. So be that as it may, we're going to wait what the Board of Selectmen say, which I believe is going to be this coming Tuesday. And I'll be interested in trying to figure out why they've gone for so many years without a job description on the tax collector. I don't understand that, number one. And number two, why don't we have a really good software program so that if somebody from the general citizenry or someone from this committee or others could come in and say, I would like to have data for such and such and such and such a date for the last 3 years, and they can press the button and out it comes. Or at least saying, hey, the report will be ready for you tomorrow morning, rather than saying, well, you can go into the vault and do all sorts of handwork yourself if you really want it. And I think in the 21st century, that's a bit push. And so, but we're willing to go into the vaults and look at paperwork. And Mr. Gore and I have both sworn that we're going to do that if, in fact, we can't get any other additional data that we may decide upon that may be necessary. And we'll ask other members of the committee to assist us as well. Yes, would you like to make a comment?
I would.
All right, sir.
I would.
Please, go ahead.
When you came to the selectmen's meeting and asked for this, questioned this information, if I'm not mistaken, you did it as a citizen. You did not do it as a member of this committee.
Okay.
Okay? This is the first time this committee has discussed this. Okay? Yesterday, the information was gathered. It's now
Okay.
being tabulated and calculated.
fine.
We'll have it for you on Tuesday night,
There's no problem.
okay?
There's no problem. But I did have a problem with people telling me that we shouldn't have this meeting this evening, and then reiterating it this afternoon that we shouldn't come, and then reiterating to me that the town administrator and tax collector would not be there. She was told not to come, and that nobody else was going to come. And then I'm surprised but happy that the select persons came today.
Oh, I planned on being at this meeting from, the
Well,
first
that's
time I
not
heard.
what the email to me said,
Okay, I don't know.
So I don't know why that you wanted to forbid having a meeting about this, because at least that is not
You're not-
necessary.
Yeah, you're not following what the ordinance says for the Warrant and Finance Committee.
Tom, do you want to make a comment about that?
Yeah, I guess
All
I
right.
can. First of all, I have several comments to make. With respect to the job descriptions, I think that's an oversight that is left over from the time we made the transition from elected officers to hired officers. The job description should have been created at the time that those officers were hired so that we knew what we were hiring. It didn't get done. And I commend the board for moving ahead and trying to get something done like that, especially since we no longer have hired officers. On the topic of what this committee can do and cannot do, this committee, in my understanding and historically, is established an elected committee of the town meeting. And we are responsible primarily because the town meeting hires and fires us. We're responsible ultimately to the town meeting. We have additional responsibilities which are enumerated in the ordinance, and they actually enable the Board of Selectmen to come and request that this committee make some recommendations for them in circumstances other than working on a warrant. We are, you will note by our name, the Warrant and Finance Committee, not just the Warrant Committee. Unfortunately, over the past 10 or 15 years, the job of this committee has been diminished to the point of just being a budget committee. That is not what it was established as, it's not what it's created as, and it's broader than simply a budget committee. So, being a committee of the town meeting, we work again for the town meeting. And we are responsible ultimately to the town meeting, in my opinion. We have, as an independent member of the committee responsible to town meeting, the authority to set our own agenda and deal in issues that relate to our job as Warrant and Finance. Again, that's my opinion. We may, but we may choose or may not choose to revisit decisions of previous boards, specifically with respect to these things. But at this point, this committee hasn't even decided whether they're going to look into it, so I think you're premature in coming to us and suggesting we're doing the wrong thing, frankly, okay? Again, we're a town meeting committee, we are parallel with each other in terms of the operation structure. Hopefully we can respect that. None of those committees that are at that level, just like other town officers, and we are town officers, you recognize already, for instance, you do not have the right to specifically instruct. You can cooperate with, but not the right to instruct your road commissioners. You don't have the right to instruct the school committee, and you don't have the right to instruct this board, okay? This board operates with the same level of independence as a school committee, in my view, as an independent committee of the town meeting. Okay, that's my view. Having said that, I do believe that part of the problem that has arisen is because this committee has unduly relied upon our overworked town administrator. And I also believe very firmly that we should not be working from or gathering aid data from other than original documents, because we want to be sure it's correct. when we rely upon, as has been done here, town reports, well, how many opportunities are there for errors to be made translating the initial commitment into the town report and then repeating that information and basing some action on it here? I think it is a burden of this committee if we're going to investigate and look into, for instance, issues related to personal property, that is this committee's responsibility and the members of this committee to generate that material. It's not proper, or I don't believe it's proper, except in circumstances where the only available access to that data may be through a town administrator. It's not proper to rely upon that town administrator to deliver to us that data. We're responsible for our own data.
Before you say anything else, I just wanted to, if I may, interject something, and that is, everyone, both the Board of Selectmen as well as this committee, took an oath of office to uphold the Constitution of the state of Maine. And it seems to me that if anyone had seen these data that I saw, with a huge 90% drop in valuation with all sorts of blank spots in between, that it was worthy of finding out what happened. Now, the selectmen seem to have taken the idea that we should not have said anything, or that shame on us, we shouldn't be discussing it. And the fact is that just my having brought it before the Board of Selectmen should have been, hey, that's a good point, we'll look into it and work with you on it, rather than saying, we're angry, you shouldn't have your meeting tonight, it's costing the taxpayer money to have a meeting tonight, and you have nothing to talk about because you don't have a warrant and all this kind of stuff. This is something which looks awful on paper. Now, there may be explanations for it, and I truly hope and pray that there are explanations for it. But when you go from $3.6 million in valuation down to $67,000 in valuation for retail personal property, then somebody ought to ask a question, and I didn't see any questions coming from the Board of Selectmen.
I don't think it's, okay, I'll just.
Now you may continue if you want to, Mr. Gore.
No, I think we beat this to death.
Okay.
I think we have a position, and the board may have a different position, but I think the board is overstepping or not respecting the authority that this board has by attempting to assert those. I also understand that the board probably understands the history and what has happened. That does not mean it's not legitimate for this board to look at it, or it's, excuse me, it's not, it is also legitimate for this committee to look at it. And at some point in time, we may come to you with some questions. Boom. At that point in time, fine. Then let's move the issue forward. But to sit here and fight about whether we should be looking at it or not, I mean, we can forget the committee. If we want to, we can just forget it. And individually, we can come in and look at all the data, we can put together a report, and we can sign it with the names of all the members of the committee on it.
Yes.
And it serves the same purpose.
Yes.
We don't want to do that. That has very bad
Connotations. Yes.
You know, it's a bad picture, all right? So I would hope, and I don't know what the board is going to want to do, because I haven't discussed it with members of the board. As you stated tonight, this is the first time we've sat together and talked about it. So we're not ready to move forward and do anything. So I would strongly urge you to let things move forward, see where it goes, have discussions, okay? Share the information. The other benefit of this is great learning experience for everybody, okay? It's a great learning experience for the committee members, okay? And you folks may learn something too. Hopefully we'll all learn something. All of this is good learning. There's a lot of good learning taking place here. And one of the biggest things that's missing from this town right now is causing
Public meeting.
I know, I can hear in the hall, but I don't hear in the
It's
hall.
causing a lot of the problems that we have now is a lack of institutional knowledge. Okay, because we do not have a lot of people active in the government who have a lot of long history with the town meeting process. And so there's a lot to learn. We all know
Tom.
or those of us who have been in it, know that there's a lot that goes on that's under the table. I shouldn't say under the table, I shouldn't use that terminology.
No,
But there's a lot in the process here, a lot more than appears on paper.
Tom,
Behind the scenes.
let me interject again. Ms. Ruma has a great deal of historical importance as far as this type of tax and the history behind it. And I talked with her husband a week and a half ago, and he reminded me that she is rich in history of this,
Oh, dear.
even not in money, rich in history.
Tax
And I was wondering if you'd make some comments about retail outlets and the personal property tax, please.
Well, it is certainly up to the Board of Selectmen to decide what they're going to tax. And, you know, that's just about it, right then and there. Quite a number of years ago, I was a selectman, and it was my responsibility at that point to go to the campground in town and speak with the owner, who kept a very complete list of changes in campers, if they stayed there for the whole summer, if they, you know, came and went, whatever. And at that point, the board had decided to collect tax on campers that were not excised for over-the-road travel and remained in the town of Acton for an indefinite period of time. And you'd go down and look and get the name of it, the year, and then come back and look at the valuation according to the model, the make, and the year of manufacture of the home that was being kept in the town of Acton without being excised. It took some time. It wasn't outrageous. You know, and sometimes, especially on older models, there's quite a bit of guesswork and research that you had to do. I would say 10 hours, possibly a year, but then that was just updating changes as well, because you had your base of what was in place the previous years and had not changed. And even when I was selectman, there was always a debate as to what property tax you're going to tax, and is it equitable to tax some personal property and not other personal property, and exactly what guidelines you're going to follow. And I guess that's...
Thank you. I just want to reiterate someone that both the last speakers said, and that is the fact that I don't particularly think that this committee is worried about not collecting certain personal property tax and revenue outlets. But the Board of Selectmen needs to have a system. They need to let the voters know that these are the entities that are going to be monitored and taxed. I mean, I just picked up the main revenue services has a bulletin just about campers and personal property tax that's available online. And maybe it's going to be figured out that you're only going to bring in $6,000 or $7,000 in taxes. And if you decide that that's not necessary, it could,
It's not.
depending on the ergs of energy expended, then that's fine. But the other thing would be the fact that we have newer things, such as cable companies that are coming in, that have to pay quite a bit because they have a lot of poles and wires and all sorts of other things that they need to pay taxes on, and they are paying taxes on it. So those may want to be expanded. But we got to have a system, and you got to let the voters know, look, this is what we're going to do. And not just have this thing sitting out here with nobody looking at it. And so when someone comes along and looks at the data and sees this tremendous drop over 7 years and asks about it, it shouldn't be a source of irritation on the part of the Board of Selectmen, and it shouldn't be a source of anger on anybody's part. Go ahead, please.
Sure. I think it's been done in a very backhanded way.
I beg your
I think
pardon?
it should have come to this board first. You should have brought it to your board first to discuss it,
Why?
because you've clearly said it's part of Warrant and Finance's job.
Well, I think you're
So I think
misunderstanding.
you should have
each
brought
other.
it to this board to discuss, and then brought it to us.
Okay.
I mean, I have no problem, we're gathering the information. We're gathering the information for a private individual who asked.
Well, let me ask
Okay.
you a question. Let me ask you a question, just out of curiosity. If we had gone that route, wouldn't you have also been angry that we were having a meeting without a warrant?
No, I have
You
no
wouldn't?
idea on that one. That's
Well,
not
I
the
do.
point.
I'll be happy to
Well,
send you a copy
and the
of
other
it if
thing-
you'd like it, okay?
Okay.
This was done,
Some of the
this was
emails-
done so that we could get it into the system. And I would have been quite happy if the Board of Selectmen said, wow, I understand your point. We will go ahead and start pulling data for it and work with you, and if you wish, work with the Warrant and Finance Committee to come to the bottom of this. Nothing more would have been said. Okay?
We don't know that.
Well, I'm telling you,
Because it
from
is,
our
we don't know
end,
that, because that's not the way it went.
I'm telling you, from our end, that's the way it would have been.
Well,
Can I say something?
Yes, of course.
I'm looking at the ordinance, it says, this is what Warrant and Finance is all about. It says we're an advisory body only, and we work, the gist of it is, we only work on warrant articles, and we send recommendations to the Board of Selectmen. Doesn't mention the town meeting at all, to anybody we report to. They get to appoint
Yes,
some
it
of us.
does, it does. That's okay.
Bottom line, whether it's this issue or some others that have come up in the last month or so that I've been here, what stands out to me is that this needs to be rewritten as to exactly what this committee is supposed to be looking at.
I would agree.
And then it will have fewer disruptions and maybe more.
But it
progress.
doesn't stop a citizen, a single citizen, from coming before the Board of Selectmen and asking
We're
about it.
acting tonight as a committee,
That's correct.
May I?
not.
Yes, go ahead, Tom.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I do agree, I do agree with you that to some extent, that document was created and modified to,
Speak up, Tom.
I'm sorry. No, I'm not gonna say anything, never mind. I don't want to say it.
Go ahead.
No, I only that I agree with Ms. Shea, the purpose and the function of Warrant and Finance was never laid out until very recently. This is part of what has been lost in the loss of institutional memory, and it is a poor document, like many of the documents that we have in town, unfortunately, because they're done hastily to fulfill a need, as opposed to developed over a period of time to build a consensus, which is the proper way to build an ordinance. An understanding amongst all the parties involved as to what is happening. What's happened is we've lost the memory, it's gone, disappeared around the year 2000, or maybe a little bit before that, and so we're where we're at.
Mr. Williams,
Yes, sir.
may I speak?
Surely.
Can we get back to the point that we were at,
Yep.
Yes,
which was the evaluation data? Okay?
it's forthcoming
It
on
is
the...
forthcoming. Ms. Rue told me that we will have it, or the Board of Selectmen will present it at their meeting on the 14th. I see no further need to discuss this at any length. We've all made points. People are unhappy. Some people are more than unhappy. Be that as it may. I agree with Ed in regard to this should have been brought to the board, or it should have been brought forward to the board. If you are representing the Warrant and Finance Committee, then you have to let everybody know I'm speaking with my Warrant and Finance hat on. If you're speaking as a private citizen, then you have to say, hey, I'm not speaking as a member of Warrant and Finance, I'm speaking as a concerned citizen. This information appears to be quite impressive and distressing. So, be that as it may, now it's, we've been brought into this as the Warrant and Finance Committee. So let's wait and see what the valuation data looks like, and then we can discuss it and see if we need or want to make any recommendations to the Board of Selectmen. Let's always remember, we are an advisory committee only,
Correct, that's absolutely correct.
okay? I'm done.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
Yeah, I just got a couple of more things.
Shirley.
My thoughts together here. Back about 3 or 4 years ago, and Tom knows this all too well, the Select Board and the Warrant and Finance Committee were butting heads. And we worked pretty hard, I think, over the last couple of years to try to straighten that out.
Yeah.
And I think we have to a certain extent.
Communication is much better.
Yep, I think it's become a lot better, and a lot of good things have happened over the last couple of years. Now, we move fast forward to the last week, primarily the last 3 or 4 days. There's been a lot of emails flying back and forth, starting with Dr. Williams, advising that he had a book. It's called The Worst 6 Years of My Life, 6 months of my life. That you would put that in writing in an email, and you would get 6 copies or 5 copies of it. But I guess it's that book you have there.
Yes.
That is not the title of the one you had said.
The
Okay.
title is Municipal Management and Finances.
Right.
That was in the email.
No, I think you had a different word for
No,
it in there.
sir, I don't. I'll be glad to send it to you tomorrow.
Yep, no, we'll find it.
Okay?
So,
What does that
bottom
have,
line
what
is,
does that have
bottom
to?
line is you're getting information from someone that is stirring up a lot of stuff from 10, 12 years ago. And bottom line, you are causing irreversible damage between this board and the Board of Selectmen.
Let's hope it's not irreversible.
Let's hope
Well,
it's
I
not
hope it's not,
irrevocable.
but I'm going to hit this hard and heavy right now. The problem is, and I see the problem being with you, I've had problems in the past up here. I've tried to get over and move forward with everything, but the emails that have flown back and forth over the last 3 days, okay? Primarily, one of those emails all but said that Miss Rue, as our town administrator, is not doing her job, and that,
I've never said that.
well, you read the email.
I
She
have
was
never said
extremely
that.
upset over it. Maybe Kim can put some light on this. Almost to the point where she was thinking of quitting.
I
So,
have never said
with
anything
that-
of the sort.
I'd like to call for your resignation from this board. Okay? I think you've caused more damage between this board and the Board of Selectmen, and I don't know if we can get over it. So I don't think...
Which part of this have you said is damaging? What did I say that was damaging? This is ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. I reiterated again that we got a job description so that the committee would know what are the types of things that tax collectors do. I did not want to, nor do I still not want to, make a job description for Ms. Rue. When I went to the window, she said, I will send you our job description this afternoon. And when I got the email from her, she said, I don't have a job description.
May I make a suggestion here?
Go right ahead.
I try to avoid going over old history to the extent possible and learn as much as I can from it. We're listening to an unfortunate debate right now about things that we don't have in front of us, so that we can't talk about specifically what we're talking about. And I don't think that resolves anything in any case. I think there is an issue with email. I would hope and pray. My mother was a school teacher, and she told me, never send anything after you write it. Wait a day and read it.
That's right.
And she was right. And lawyers will tell you, don't even send email, for God's sake, because it gets you in more trouble than it solves. That having been said, we need to slow down a little bit and give a little thought on everybody's part to what is being said, and if we have an issue with it, address the issue directly. This line, I may have misunderstood you, or do we have a problem with this line? I may have misunderstood you, or do we have an issue that we need to resolve? If you folks would like to get together and discuss that and go over item by item by item by item, that would be a great way to move forward. And I don't know what you want to do. That's totally up to you guys. Okay. I frankly stopped reading emails about a week ago.
I wish I had.
Well, okay. That having been said, this also is a huge possible learning experience on everybody's part, because I see in what I have seen a lot of opportunity for misunderstanding, okay? Simply because, especially on the part of our clerk, because our clerk is so rushed. She's got so much and she's trying to do so much, and more power to her. I love her dearly, but she doesn't have the time, and this is why I said we should be doing our own research here. We shouldn't be putting this job on the clerk, on the town administrator. But if you're going to have a discussion about specifically what you're going to talk about, please do it one-on-one or two-on-two basis or whatever.
Mr. Long, you've
opposed
been
to doing it in front of the TV camera.
You've been very patient. You want to say a few words, sir?
Yes, I stand by my comments.
Okay.
That's fine. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed.
I feel like I'm Donald Trump down in Washington.
Donald Trump in Boston, is that what you said?
Down in Washington.
Oh.
I used to play golf. I don't know if anybody wants to go and play some or not. The reason, and this was done, and I'm talking as a former selectman, the reason the personal property tax was dropped was, I'll give you an example. Romac Orchards was paying property tax, personal property tax on their equipment. Every year when they bought something to build a trailer, they notified the town that they had some different equipment. Well, when I was selectman, I was looking through the stuff, and this isn't anything, saying anything bad about anybody, but Romac Orchard was the only one paying personal property tax on their equipment.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so I called up Gordon Waterman, and I says, we got an issue here because you're the only one that's paying personal property tax, and we have 3 orchards in town. When Smith's Campground came up, and this was after I was selectman, it was the same issue. You are charging personal property tax on the people down here in the campground, but you're not doing it for everybody else. So, number one, it's not fair, and not even sure it's legal.
Mm-hmm.
And so the people that were selectmen at the time said, I guess, unless we're going to go out and go into the restaurants, go into the stores, and go around to all the businesses and do all this, either we're going to do it all or we're not going to do it. And in reality, that's why it was stopped, because everybody wasn't getting taxed. There's only a certain few. And so then the Board of Selectmen then said, I remember Kenny and his wife coming up here and talking to the selectmen about it. And that's why they stopped. And so whether it's right or whether it's wrong, the way the town was doing it at the time was wrong. And I said, when I was selectman even, I mean, either you do it all or you don't do any.
Yes.
But it wasn't changed till after I was gone, and that's when Bill Shields and Ted Kryzak and Lisa Crockett were selectmen.
Amen.
So that's, hopefully will answer why we went from $3 million down to
67,000.
and which is, so I agree with, I might not agree with what the selectmen did, but their reasons for doing it was right.
Understand. Thank you.
You know, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Long. Appreciate it.
As Dennis said, it had historically been an issue because, you know, you're taxing, say, Smith's Campground trailers in place, but there are other people who had trailers on their property that were not excised, but were not being taxed, so it was a matter of fairness.
To end this on a lighter note, if I may, I was reading through the tax laws the past couple of days, and I came across a provision in the law that says any exempted personal property, as a result of the law exempting certain personal property, it will be reimbursable to the town, or any revenue realized or lost as a result of those exemptions would be reimbursed at a rate of 50% to the town from the state. I had to read that a little bit harder and discovered that that only applied to property that was exempted after 1978, I think it is. And so all the exemptions that the state granted in the 73 revision of the legislation, which I think I sent a copy of that to everybody. Unfortunately, I'm thinking to myself, my God, we could go out and assess all the personal property in town and get reimbursed the whole cost of that from the state. But no, unfortunately, it didn't work that way. Sorry. I tried.
So we will await the report on Tuesday next. Is there any other new business that you wish to bring up? Anyone? May I hear a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Is
I will
there a
second
second? Any other discussion? All in favor, aye.
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 All opposed? Thank you all very much.
Thank you.